So now I'm very happy to go into to begin our webinar, which is, and the first speaker that we will have is Kathleen Schuler, who is the co-director of Healthy Legacy in Minnesota and a senior policy analyst for the Institute for Agriculture and Trade Policy. And she is also, I believe she's one of the co-directors of the Minnesota Green Chemistry Forum. And she will be followed by Tim Kapsner, who is a senior research scientist at Aveda, which has been a leading company in terms of using the principles of green chemistry in the products that they produce. So I'm going to turn it over to Kathleen now. Thank you very much, Kathleen. And again, be sure to just type in your questions at any time during the presentations, and we will get to them in the question and answer period afterwards. Kathleen?
Thank you, Lynn. So thank you so much for inviting me. I wanted to talk about the Green Chemistry Forum, but also to give some background about why green chemistry is so valuable and why we're focusing on it in Minnesota. So I work for the Institute for Agriculture and Trade Policy, and we work locally and globally at the intersection of policy and practice to ensure fair and sustainable food, farm, and trade systems. So we're very invested in green chemistry because green chemistry is an opportunity for economic development in rural and in urban communities. It's a way to make our food safer and to protect public health. But I'm also co-director of Healthy Legacy, and we are a 35-member statewide coalition dedicated to safe products made safely. We have 35 members now. We just had a new group join, and we also partner with Clean Water Action. They do a lot of the grassroots organizing. So why are we invested in green chemistry? Sorry, I'm not putting my slides forward.
Quentin, maybe you can offer some assistance to Kathleen?
Yeah, it's not, my slides aren't moving forward. I don't know what's going on.
Kathleen, from what I can see is your mouse is pointing at to the left arrow instead of going to the right arrow.
Oh, okay. Sorry about that.
There you go.
All right, technology. So, okay, so there's lots of chemicals that are used in commerce. A lot of chemicals that we know are toxic that have been around for a long time. Chemicals like lead and PCBs, even though they were banned in 1976, they still pollute our food system and our bodies, unfortunately. Asbestos, another example. Vinyl chloride, especially affecting workers and causing cancer. Mercury, even though we've made a lot of progress on regulation of mercury in products, we are still finding mercury in things like skin creams that African American women use and high fructose corn syrup. So the problem of mercury hasn't gone away. Tetrachloroethylene in dry cleaning. Now there's a lot of cleaners that are focusing on safer methods of dry cleaning, but it's still the prevalent technology to use toxic chemicals in dry cleaning. So we have these old chemicals that we know a lot about. Many of them are on the TSCA inventory and so are widely used by companies. But then we've got the whole slew of new chemicals, the brominated flame retardants that are chemically similar to PCBs and are still used in a lot of products. Phthalates, alkyl-phenol compounds used in cleaners and surfactants, and the perfluorocarbon or the Teflon and Scotchgard chemicals that are used in food packaging and other applications. And then, of course, cadmium in children's jewelry and other products. Bisphenol A has gotten a lot of attention, and even though we're phasing out some uses of bisphenol A, it's still widely used. So these chemicals get in our food system. Some of them are persistent and bioaccumulative, and so they build up in the food chain. Others are used in packaging, such as bisphenol A and phthalates. So we're exposed daily through our food system. We all carry a chemical body burden, nearly 300 chemicals found in cord blood. Many of the persistent chemicals are found in breast milk. We still advise women to breastfeed, but we'd like to get these chemicals out of breast milk. The Centers for Disease Control in their testing routinely finds this whole list of chemicals in the human body in nearly everyone who's tested. And we see some of the same chemicals over and over again. So the health impacts include cancer, birth defects, learning and developmental problems. You probably heard recently that the rate of autism among school-age children is now 1 in 88, which is an astounding increase considering just almost 10 years ago it was 1 in 120. We have a prevalence of reproductive problems that are linked with a slew of hormone-disrupting chemicals. And now obesogens, a lot of the same chemicals that are hormone disruptors are linked with fat accumulation and could be playing a role in the obesity epidemic. So what we need from green chemistry is to look at the whole product life cycle, to design safer products, have safer manufacturing, consumer use using safer products so there's less exposure, and then safer disposal methods. And green chemistry, of course, can result in safer products, safer workplaces, safer communities, and a safer environment. And I don't think we need to define green chemistry, because I think if you're on this call, you probably know what green chemistry is. So green chemistry is also good for business. This is an article that appeared in Forbes. It's time to give consumers and companies vital information about the products they make, purchase, and use. So consumers are demanding safer products, and downstream businesses would like to give them those safer products. And in order to do that, they need to know what's in their supply chain so their suppliers can provide those safer chemicals. And unfortunately, we often ban chemicals, and they're replaced by substitutes that are still risky for public health. And one example of regrettable substitution is chlorinated tris replacing penta. That's supposed to be BDE in polyurethane foam products. So a number of years ago, penta-bromo-diphenyl ether was widely used in polyurethane foam. And the manufacturers phased it out. The EPA worked with them to phase it out because it was persistent and bioaccumulative, and also toxic because of its bioavailability. So penta was phased out of these foam products, but now it's being replaced with chlorinated tris, that chemical, if you remember, that was banned in children's pajamas in the 1970s. Now it's being used in changing table pads, nursing pillows, and sleep wedges. So we've got rid of one chemical and ended up with another bad one to replace it. So green chemistry is beneficial for business and for our economy. It can contribute to a sustainable economy. We talk about green jobs, but definitely green chemistry is a sector of our business environment that can create green jobs. Support diverse, sustainable biomass production. And at ITP, we're one of the founding members of the Sustainable Biomaterials Collaborative, which focuses on cradle to cradle. It can improve profitability and reduce liability for businesses and meet consumer demands for safer products. So I want to go into a little bit of detail about the promise of green chemistry for protecting human health and the environment, preventing food chain pollution, relieving economic pressures on state and local governments through waste prevention, and making our consumer goods safer. So an important aspect of green chemistry is protecting human health and the environment, and that goes hand in hand with preventing food chain pollution. I'm using a couple of examples from Minnesota. In Minnesota, our health department has a program focused on contaminants of emerging concern, And they've identified a number of chemicals that are found in groundwater or have potential to be found in groundwater because they're in monitoring wells or elsewhere in the environment. So they're finding pharmaceuticals, of course, and triclosan because it's so widely used in products as an antibacterial. Bisphenol A, the alkyl phenol compounds, phthalates, parabens, and 1,4-dioxane. And just about every chemical on that list is a hormone disruptor. So we have these chemicals in the environment, and I like to believe that green chemistry, if it had been applied, would have prevented some of these chemicals from being used in the first place. There would have been proper testing or substitution so they didn't end up in our waters. So the concern about chemicals in the food chain is especially with the persistent bioaccumulative chemicals. So we've got the brominated flame retardants, the perfluorochemicals that have built up in the food chain that are in fish, meat, and dairy products. But we also have the chemicals that are used in food packaging, like bisphenol A, the perfluorochemicals, and phthalates. And the recent Silent Spring Institute study showing if people eat a packaging-free diet, they can reduce their level of both the phthalates and the bisphenol A in their bodies. So it just goes to show this is a daily exposure. The application of green chemistry can also relieve the economic pressures on state and local governments through waste prevention. There's tens of billions of pounds of plastic that enter landfills every year. Very little of this is recycled, and recycling is at best just a partial solution. Electronic waste is definitely a concern. Even though it's recycled, there's still billions of pounds that go into landfills and enter the environment. And certainly environmental stewardship or product stewardship programs can help keep this waste out and recycle it into the technological cycle in the cradle-to-cradle model versus disposing of it. Hazardous waste is a concern with thousands of hazardous waste sites in the U.S. and the number growing. The cost is huge both to the federal government and also to local government, who's responsible at the local level for the cost of getting rid of this hazardous waste. And finally, green chemistry can make consumer goods safer. In Minnesota, we have the Toxic Free Kids Act. And I'm going to use these chemicals as an example. So this is a list of priority chemicals that the health department has designated as chemicals of concern in children's products, with 3 phthalates and 2 brominated flame retardants, formaldehyde, lead, cadmium, and bisphenol A. And these chemicals kind of illustrate the potential for green chemistry and also the concern that consumers have about some of these chemicals. So bisphenol A, you probably heard about the baby bottles and sippy cups. Now, bisphenol A used to be used in baby bottles and sport water bottles and polycarbonate plastic. Those uses have pretty much been phased out. Minnesota was the first state to ban bisphenol A in baby bottles and sippy cups in 2009. Now we have 12 states with bans. It's also out of formula cans. So we've got those products are pretty much BPA free. Unfortunately, it's still in canned food, a lot of canned food that's geared to children, and baby food jar lids. Another example is formaldehyde, which is used in textiles, and we participated in some testing and found formaldehyde in crib sheets and other baby products. It's in baby shampoos and other personal care products, cleaning products, and wood products, and that's a carcinogen. So if we're looking at green chemistry, we can look at the resources and policies that can support green chemistry. And there's a whole list of them there. We can have tax incentives, loans and grants programs, technical assistance. All those are really, really important. What we focus on with the Minnesota Green Chemistry Forum is the education and networking piece. We decided to start modestly and do what we can by highlighting businesses that are using green chemistry and having our annual conferences and providing opportunities for people to network with the leading green chemistry businesses. But I also wanted to mention that regulation is part of the picture as well. We know that the Toxic Substances Control Act has failed to regulate chemicals, and we know that that needs to be fixed. There's an incentive to use a lot of the TSCA inventory chemicals and not to come up with new ones because the safety data isn't required. State policies such as in Minnesota and other states have really contributed to regulating some of the most chemicals of concern that consumers care about. And then recently the American Sustainable Business Council did a small business survey. And this was a bipartisan survey, and they found that businesses were less concerned with regulation than they were with weak demand. So the biggest problem with their business environment was they needed greater demand, and that they weren't concerned about regulations on food safety, toxic chemicals, energy efficiency, and other issues. And they wanted to be competitive with the larger businesses. So the Green Chemistry Forum is a group that we started in Minnesota 2.5 years ago. And we came up with our modest mission, which is fostering a common understanding among businesses, government, non-governmental organizations, and academia to advance green chemistry practice and policy in Minnesota and nationally. And we haven't so far worked on policy. We may enter the policy realm in the future. But we came together and we invited Aveda to be our partner since I work for an NGO organization, and it's really important to have a key business partner, and Aveda has been great. We invited businesses that were using green chemistry or interested in green chemistry. We invited appropriate state agencies such as the Department of Employment and Economic Development, the Pollution Control Agency, and the University of Minnesota and other academic institutions. So in the beginning, we just were a network. We decided to organize a little bit more formally this last year, and we developed a governance structure where we have a steering committee. Currently, I'm the chair, and Tim is the co-chair, and that will turn over on an annual basis. We have 2 representatives each from the NGO, business, academia, and government sectors. So right now, we're focused on our annual conference and our happy hour networking events. And these are some of our members. Tim's going to talk about some of the businesses that are using green chemistry, and there's a couple on this slide here. Earth Clean, which is making a cornstarch-based fire suppressant that's entirely environmentally friendly. Active Ion, which is making a cleaning device that uses no chemicals at all. So we've had 2 conferences so far, and we've been really pleased to have John Warner as our keynote in 2011, and 2000. Our conference this year was really successful as well. So we started doing happy hour events because we wanted to attract more businesses. We were having daytime meetings. So in March, we featured the CEO of Earth Clean, and in May, we're going to partner with the Society of Cosmetic Chemists, and we're going to feature the BioPDO chemical and Pete Colombo from DuPont, Tate, and Lyle. So our future is we'd like to be sustainable as an organization. We'd like to increase our capacity, and so we're developing a membership model. We're looking at a funding mechanism, and we are possibly going to consider in Minnesota, there's some talk about a Green Chemistry Innovations Council, which would be through the administration, and future partnerships and projects such as working on pollution prevention or youth leadership. And that completes my presentation, and I'd like to turn over to Tim Kapsner from Aveda.
Just getting ready here. Okay, I think I'm set. Hi, thank you all for coming today, and I'd like to talk to you some about how Aveda looks at green chemistry. I'm a senior research scientist, and I do what I call ingredient and technology development. I've been here for almost 20 years now, and it doesn't have anything to do with that, but in the last couple of years I've started to get some allergies. So I have to apologize in advance. I might have to pause once in a while to cough. But other than that, I'm fine. Our mission at Aveda is to care for the world we live in, from the products we make to the ways in which we give back to society. At Aveda, we strive to set an example for environmental leadership and responsibility, not just in the world of beauty, but around the world. That's Aveda's mission. Horst wrote those words about 30 years ago. You see them everywhere in the building. You see them on our website when you walk in the front of the building, and we recite them as we start every one of our major meetings around here. So everybody just sort of absorbs that, and you don't even have to memorize it. You just know it. And it's more appropriate than ever before. We've been, Horst started the company in 1978, and in 1998, exactly 20 years later, Paul Anastas and John Warner put some words and a name to what companies like Aveda had been doing many years and called it green chemistry. So we now are thinking that one of the things that we practice is green chemistry. We like to talk about sustainability. We look at a big picture of what we call sustainability, and we look at many aspects of that, from plant sourcing to the green chemistry principles, which you're all familiar with. We do a lot of work with fair trade, not necessarily the certifications per se, but we do it in how we do business with the people that we work with around the world. We do a lot with indigenous populations around the world to help them harvest materials that can keep them as sustainers of the land and make money off the land without having to sell it to somebody who's going to come in and mine or strip the land. And we do all of what we do by building partnerships with individuals and companies around the world to make sure that everybody is benefiting and the environment and the land are also benefiting from our work. I had the great pleasure to do a lot of brainstorming around here many years ago about some projects that we could work on in this sustainability mode, and one of the things that we came up with was to make salicylic acid from oil of wintergreen. Oil of wintergreen, some of you may know as primarily methyl salicylate. That's what gives it its unique smell. And if you look at this slide, you start with methyl salicylate, that's the molecule here, and you put a little sodium hydroxide in it. You get the salicylate anion, which precipitates out in water to give you salicylic acid, and then the sodium hydroxide goes around the circle, back again, and you do the whole thing over and over again until you've created a whole pile of salicylic acid. This slide took me about an hour to produce, and the project took me about 3 years, took us about 3 years, because it was two different companies on three different companies on 2 different continents that it took us to get to the point where we could use this. And the reason is that USP pharmaceutical grade salicylic acid is 99.5% minimum. So to get from 80 or so percent up to 99.5% was a huge amount of work. And we ended up doing it. We're using this in our acne products right now. And it costs us, I think, about 20 or 30 times what conventional petroleum-based salicylic acid does. But we can afford it because our consumers get it, and our products cost more because the consumers know that this is how we run our business. A couple of other examples of things we've done along those lines. We make a palm-derived hair conditioner here, where we're starting with certified organic palm stearin that we buy from a co-op in Brazil, and then that gives us the sustainable sourcing, and that company actually puts a significant amount of its money into community support. They give a piece of land, including the palm trees, back to a farmer, a family who owns that land, and then sells the palm oil back to the company, and then they process it and sell us the certified organic palm stearin. We work with a U.S. company in partnership to produce a product that's more biodegradable and has improved ability to do what we want to do. And I'm getting some pop-ups here. Another example is the Babaçu betaine that we buy from Brazil. I had the pleasure of going down to Brazil to work with a co-op down there that we buy the Babaçu oil from. It's about 400,000 women that live in the northeast of Brazil, a co-op called Copals. And we actually worked on a project with them about 15 years ago. We came down there and found a certifier in Brazil that could certify the land and the palm trees and the oil for them. And so now these women are selling certified organic Babaçu oil to us and their other customers. We buy it, and we make several different foaming products from that we use in most of our products. We got involved in the Cradle to Cradle certification several years ago with the Environmental Protection Encouragement Agency. screen. And we had 3 products certified in 2008, Urucum that we buy in Brazil, sandalwood that we buy from Australia, rose oil from Bulgaria, and geranium oil from Bulgaria. And then in 2009, we had I'm counting them, 8 products certified, the finished products certified to the Cradle to Cradle certification, including dry remedy and moisturizing conditioner and shampoo, smooth infusion shampoo and conditioner, and Green Science firming face cream. So this has been a very successful cooperative work with Cradle to Cradle, and I think we were the first company to get Cradle to Cradle certification of our cosmetic products. Aveda was the first beauty company in the world manufacturing with 100% wind power. We have an exchange with our local company where we pay more money to buy certified wind power from wind farms in the area, and we use that. That's the power we used in our entire manufacturing facility to make all the products we make here. And this Blaine facility is our primary facility where we make all of our skin conditioners, our shampoos, all of our liquid products, and our hair colors. Our corporate campus, we sit on 40 acres here that we continue to own, and the campus in Blaine includes ponds and native plantings. It's a gorgeous facility and has been recognized as a certified wildlife habitat site by the National Wildlife Foundation. The windows you see on the side of the building, I think, look into Organica, which is our restaurant in the building that serves food made entirely from certified organic ingredients, and that's where I've been eating for the last 19 years, and it's really good food. If you put the word perfume into Wikipedia, you get this really cool picture, which shows kind of a romanticized image of what perfumes were probably thousands of years ago, where they were extracting, I think this must be rose petals. And at Aveda, that's actually how we do it. 90% of our aroma essential oils are certified organic. So here we see pictures of ylang in the upper left, which we buy from Madagascar, rose in the lower left, which we buy from, I think, Bulgaria, and lavender that we buy from France, and in the upper right, I think, is the certified organic sandalwood, sustainable sandalwood oil that we buy from Australia. We buy 40,000 kilos of organic essential oils, which is a huge amount. And that includes 4,000 kilos of lavender oil, over $500,000 worth per year, 3,000 kilos of orange oil, $400,000 worth of ylang oil, and 92.95% of those are certified organic. And there's other companies. Kathleen mentioned the Green Chemistry Forum that we started about 2.5 years ago. There are other really interesting, really exciting companies that we work with here that the forum is working with, including BioAmber. She had a picture of the BioAmber presentation in November. They're making succinic acid from plant sources. Sagetis, another very interesting small local company that are making solvents and plasticizers from plant sources. Relucio, another startup business here, is making biopolymers from cellulose. So there's a lot of really exciting companies that are here in Minnesota that are working in this green chemistry arena. The question I mentioned, these prices of our raw materials and how much we pay for our essential oils and the salicylic acid that's so extraordinarily expensive. And people ask us, or people talk about this a lot, is how can you afford that? And I guess our market, our people understand that we're buying plant-based sustainable materials using green chemistry principles, and so they get it and they pay more for our finished products. But the idea of sustainability and cost sustainability is expressed rather interestingly if you look at this picture of crude oil prices starting in 1946 going up through all the way up to 2010, and you see that spike that was interrupted by the recession that we had over the last couple of years, and then you see at the end the prices going back up again. And I guess what that says to me is that if you think about the sustainability of the cost of these materials that we're now buying from plants and a lot of people are buying from petroleum, if you project out into the future of what is going to happen to the cost of oil, I'm not a statistician, but I don't think it takes a genius to see that the cost of oil is going to skyrocket, and it's probably fairly likely that the sustainability of plant-based ingredients that are renewable and sustainable is probably going to be better than the future cost of petroleum-based ingredients. So I think people who are moving into plant-based, green chemistry-based, sustainable ingredients are probably on the right track as far as the future of costs. Kathleen mentioned the Green Chemistry Forum, and I'll just spend a few minutes talking about that. We had the March Green Chemistry Happy Hour here, and it was another very successful event. And Kathleen again also mentioned the mission of the forum, and this is again about the conference in 2012, which was very successful, and we're planning already the next conference, and we're hoping that will be even more successful than this one. And so the companies that are also involved, I mentioned Sagetis, and I guess it's Mrs. Murphy's Soap. I always forget. They actually got the website soap.com, which I think is really cool. Evercat Fuels, a local company that's making biodiesel. Gevo, which is a company making isobutanol from plant sources. Relucio, we just talked about, making polymers from plants. And NatureWorks, of course. Everybody's familiar with NatureWorks, who is making the bio-based plastics. So there's a lot of really interesting, really exciting companies in Minnesota, BioAmber also, that are doing a lot of green chemistry, and it's just fun to go to these meetings because there's so many well-connected people there that are in the same mode as we are, having lots of fun with green chemistry and willing and able to talk about it and work together. Our website is www.greenchemistrynn.org. Check it out if you want to see what's happening, and I thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Tim. That was great. And Kathleen, let's see. I am beginning to get some questions. I was hoping, though, I'm going to take the prerogative to ask one question first, and that is to Tim. And what would you say one of the best benefits has been of having the Minnesota Green Chemistry Forum from a business perspective?
I think it's exciting. The whole idea was to get, as Kathleen mentioned, people and organizations from all the different sectors of the community, the NGOs, the government, academia, and industry to come together in a non-competitive format and forum to talk about collaborating, communicating, and educating each other on green chemistry. And that's, to me, the most exciting thing about it. I go to all these meetings that we've had, and the people that are at the table are so innovative and so excited and so well connected. They're out there talking to people around the country and around the world about sustainability issues and about green chemistry, and I come away from these meetings always really charged up about how great it is to be able to be working with these people and to have a network where we can encourage each other and just make green chemistry happen.
Thank you very much. Okay, so we have a lead-off question for Tim Kapsner. Could you give us your or Aveda's thoughts on the environmental profile of dimethicone that is used in a number of Aveda products and which Environment Canada lists as potentially environmentally persistent and as a potential environmental hazard? Is this a substance to which Aveda is looking for an alternative? And more broadly, are there other widely used ingredients that Aveda is targeting for replacement, either by reformulation or substitution?
Yeah, thank you. That's a very interesting question, and I'll answer it in the best way, which is the broadest way. And we're always looking for alternatives that are better from a sustainability standpoint, whether it's silicones or surfactants or conditioning ingredients or any of the components that we use in our products. And we make a lot of different hair and skincare products, and you will see silicone ingredients on our products because we've been around for 30 years, and there are functions that up until now we haven't been able to find a way to accomplish without using ingredients that we want to find alternatives for. So we haven't found those alternatives. That's why we're working with organizations like the EPEA folks at Cradle to Cradle, is to help us keep that in front of us, is that we always want to be doing better. We always want to be finding a better way to do what we do, which is to make highly functional products and use the most sustainable ingredients that are built with green chemistry and sustainability principles to take us to that new level where we can get that functionality and make the products even greener and more sustainable.
Thank you. I have another question. With climate change, this is also for Tim, with climate change, is there also a risk for natural product-based chemicals also? As plant climates change, droughts, etc., what, if anything, are you doing to mitigate this risk?
Boy, you know, I don't even, I apologize, I don't even quite understand the question. Can you rephrase that maybe?
Yeah, if the questioner can maybe clarify a little bit. I'm just reading to you what we received. I think that the way I'm understanding it is whether you think that there's going to be a negative impact of climate change on the plants on which you rely to get some of these chemicals.
Okay.
You know, this
okay. Well,
versus
we've seen climate change taking place. The immediate effects right now of things in the United States happening that have never happened before, and we've got the polar ice caps changing, and I think there's a lot of consensus in the scientific community that climate change is taking place, and of course that's changing the growing conditions around the world. And there have been situations where there's been enough climate change with droughts in places that have never had droughts before that have interrupted the supply of various things. I think people have been talking about vanilla beans in the last year or so, where there was some vanilla bean shortages because of climate change, and that's interesting because that's the dilemma of using more plant-based materials. You have to plan a lot farther in advance. The people in here that buy our essential oils and our other vegetable and plant-based ingredients, they have to plan years in the future and secure these sources because we don't want to be out of stock on things any more than we have to be. So yes, it is a factor, and it's something it just changes the way you do business. You have to think more about your supply if your supply is based on a growing cycle and plants that may not be there if the growing conditions aren't right.
I think you answered the rest of it. The person also said, what if anything, are you doing to mitigate this risk? So maybe they're asking about what, I'm not sure either, but maybe it's what practices are you engaging in to, I suppose, improve your own carbon footprint? That may not be her, but I'm just trying to
I just missed the last word you say, to improve what?
to improve your own Aveda's carbon footprint.
Oh, okay. Well, that's actually a different type of perspective and a different picture. We're doing everything we can besides just focusing on plant-based, sustainable, and green chemistry type sourcing. We're actually also, I talked about the fact that we're using wind-based energy in our facility, and we've done a lot just within the facility. We went through all of our lighting over a period of several years and are using the most advanced lighting we can to minimize our energy use. We're moving towards a zero waste production facility from the standpoint of water usage. We're minimizing the amount of water we use by using recycled water for cooling our batches. And I don't have a lot of the statistics in front of me, but there are people in the building that spend all of their time just figuring out how to do things to minimize our carbon footprint in the way we use energy and the way we recycle cardboard. And we started a caps recycling program. Some people may have heard about this, where all around the country, this had never been done before. We're getting back our caps and other caps and reusing those to make new caps that we use on our products. So we're looking at all the different aspects of being sustainable, from our packaging to our raw materials, to our facility, to how we get products from one place to another, and it's all about minimizing your carbon footprint.
Thanks, Tim. Well, we have time for more questions, and I'd like to encourage people to type their questions in. And while they're thinking about that, I actually have a question for both of you, which is what do you think the challenges are? What challenges have you faced in bringing people together in the Minnesota Green Chemistry Forum? And also, do you see, what role would you see for an organization like the Forum working on a regional basis with, for example, the Great Lakes Green Chemistry Network?
So this is Kathleen. So some of the challenges are, these are really busy people. So we originally had people join, and people couldn't make every meeting. I mean, that was reasonable. And then after a while, people made very few meetings, which is why we moved to more of the happy hour networking model, so that we can widen the circle of participation and at the same time not set up a high expectation that people have to come to meetings. You can come to a networking event. Another challenge is definitely resources. We're trying to get a sustained source of funding, which is why we're developing a membership model, which is going to be modest funding, and hopefully we can find other sources, especially using our conference to generate more sponsorships, and we can generate funding for our ongoing work. As far as regionally, I think there are definite possibilities of more regional coordination. It's a little bit more challenging to get folks together on a regional basis. You've been really successful, Lynn, at bringing people together for the webinars, but maybe there are other opportunities as well.
Yeah, I think that's, Kathleen hit it on the head there. It's the challenge is just taking all this energy that we both see in all the people and the activities and the focus that they have and making the most benefit out of it. And I think that the aspects, the education and collaboration and communication aspects of it are what the focus is, and I think we're actually doing a good job of that. I think people are energized about the group. I think we've accomplished a lot with our forum meetings and our conferences, and just some of the networking that people have been able to do to find other either companies or organizations in the area that want to work on projects.
I do. Okay. Here's a clarification of the earlier question. The questioner was talking about mitigating the risk of supply chain losses. As you mentioned, when a drought means that you can't get a material, what is Aveda doing to reduce this risk of supply intervention?
That is the ultimate question, like I think I said, for a company like Aveda. And the guy who does that, a good and long friend of mine that works in what we call the global, our purchasing department we call global supplier relations, because that's really the better way to express what we do. We don't just buy stuff. We set up relationships with people and companies all over the world that are our suppliers, and you have to cover yourself in several different ways by buying large enough quantities so that if there's a crop failure in a year and you're buying lavender oil, that you aren't stuck with not having enough lavender oil to make your products. And that's a matter of planning far enough in advance and trying to find alternatives for the same material. And that's difficult with plant materials because some of these are fairly unique, and we actually buy quite a bit of the output of some regions of the world in certain essential oils. So that is the biggest challenge we face in moving towards plant-based materials, and that's the biggest challenge that any company is going to face, whether your raw materials are based on forestry ingredients or agricultural ingredients or wild harvested ingredients that come from the rainforest. That is an issue, and I guess the only way to answer that is that the planet is really big, and we're all hoping, and companies like Aveda are hoping, that as people recognize the value of the land that they are homesteading or taking care of, that there's going to be more and more people that are going to be willing to work with companies like Aveda to develop crops that can be made into ingredients like the plant-based materials that we use.
Thank you. So I have another question for both Kathleen and Tim. Can either of you speak to how the Minnesota Green Chemistry Forum and members might be addressing issues of transparency in product agreements and formulation? Is this something the forum is discussing with respect to new product safety and how toxicity testing information is shared with workers and consumers? If so, can you share some of that discussion?
Well, that's a good question. We've other than in conferences featuring things like certification and various issues like that, we haven't really delved into the policy realm because we wanted to encourage participation and networking. And if you look at the mission, it's not so much about policy. We may get into the policy realm in the future, and so the issue of transparency could be part of that. Basically, it's just the individual companies that have their standard for transparency. On the other part of my work, I work on chemical policy, and definitely transparency is a key part of that.